Tuesday, I called Vivian. I was pretty excited. I said, Vivian, I already have a title or a theme, a subject for my talk on Sunday, because usually that may not happen till midnight Saturday night. I never know. She said, wow. Well, what is it? I said, I'm going to call it Our Greatest Challenge. And she said, well, what is that? And our greatest challenge is to overcome disparity. I feel. I talked about that a few weeks ago. And so yesterday morning, I'm going to do the order of service. And that's when I go online and look for quotes that kind of align themselves with the gist of my talk. Third one I looked at turns to find out that it's not only my opinion, that who's that fellow? Nelson Mandela has the very same opinion. That our greatest challenge is to overcome disparity. There's a lot of problems that we're faced with: climate change, global warming, inequality, violence. But no solution will come until we rid ourselves of disparity. How do we do that? I think there's one way, and that's to become one with each other. Unity. To unite with one another. As a society, we are so divided. So very divided. And on top of all of the divisions that we have, we feel it's so necessary to label everyone. We all take such pride here in this community of being so progressively, I'll just call it progressive. Maybe liberal, but certainly progressive. But at the very same moment, when somebody says, from Kansas, makes a statement about race or immigration, all of a sudden, aren't we the first ones to say, well, those racist xenophobes? We label them. We point out the division, the difference. Do you ever stop and think? I challenge each one of you. This week, catch yourself with all the labels we use. The labels that subconsciously and technically divide us. I was very proud to be able to volunteer my sound equipment and stage for the last two women's marches. And there was another coming together thing in June. I don't know what the title was, but I was happy to be able to support these community building and awareness and motivational events. But when you stop and think about it, why aren't we coming together as a society to demonstrate and work and find solutions that bring about equality for all? Why do we have to label and find the difference between men and women and Hispanics and African Americans and Norwegians and Frenchmen? it helps us picture in our minds, but we are all human beings, and the problems we face, the disparities we face in this world today don't have room for designation. Whether you're male or female, light-skinned, dark-skinned, whether you're English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, or German-speaking. The challenges we face are monumental. I had the pleasure, I think that's the right word, to attend a thank you reception put on by Mike Thompson out of Solid Tomatoes this past Friday evening. And it was a fun event. A lot of hoorah and hip hip hooray, and thank you for all of the volunteers who worked to bring about election results, to bring about the Women's Day marches and all of the other community building events and community awareness building events. But I kind of got a little disappointed, because here again, it wound up being us against them. And Mike was talking about, and I know Mike, I like Mike. Mike was talking about, hey, we finally passed a bill about gun control. First one, yeah. Well, gun control isn't the problem, folks. It's the consciousness of violence that is prevalent across this world. Instead of talking about, oh, we get a gold scar because we came up with a little bill about controlling guns. It's not the guns that need control. It's the consciousness of human beings that needs to be elevated. When is it going to be our united consciousness that says violence is not acceptable? Hollywood, we aren't going to watch your violent movies. Video games, we aren't going to watch and let our children watch your violence in the video games. Police officers, we are not going to accept violence. In our military, there is not a military solution to any problem on this planet. When are we going to sit down? We got these red states and blue states. 50 years ago, there wasn't such a thing. People had different political viewpoints, but we didn't label them and divide them. When are we going to be able to sit down with folks in Kansas and say, what is it we all want here? How can we all work together? I used to ranch and farm in Kansas and Oklahoma both. I love those people. They are straight up, and as a society, they're hard-working. They're in church every Sunday. They try to raise their kids right. They're a little more resistant to change because they just don't have the influx of change like the coastal states do. They don't have all the immigration diversity. They don't have the diverse culture. They're living in a culture that hasn't changed a whole lot in 300 years. And why can't we accept the fact that they were raised up with values that are maybe a little different than ours? I worked for a rancher. He was also the largest Allis-Chalmers dealership in the United States in a little town of Leroy, Kansas, population 116. A black family moved out of Kansas City down to this little town out in the country called Leroy, Kansas. My boss had me drive him and the banker and 2 other ranchers to greet these people when they came in. And I heard my boss say, his name's Ted Sutherland, he said, "Want to welcome you to the community. And I have no malice toward you personally. I don't even know you." But he said, "I understand you gave $55,000 for your farm. I will give you $60,000 cash for it today. And the reason I'm going to do that is because there's never been a black family in Woodson County. Never. And probably it ought to stay that way. And I wish you no harm, but I don't think things are going to work out well for you. And I don't want you to take a loss. Here's a profit. And the banker, you can take my check and take it to the bank and they'll cash it for you today. Take as long as you want to move. I just want things to work out for all of us." The guy said, "Well, I'm just not interested in selling." 2 weeks later, his barn burnt down and he sold his ranch to Ted. And I'm betting that in Woodson County, Neosho County, Coffee County, and Allen County in Kansas, there's still not a black family ever lived there. That is the culture. Is it wrong? We think it's wrong. That's the way those folks were raised. So how can we sit down with them and compare our cultures? And instead of calling them wrong and finding out what that difference is, we know what the difference is. What do we want for our children? What do we want out of life? What do we think is important that our country stand for and do? Folks, we have to hold hands and stick together. The next few decades are going to be very, very challenging for every human being on this planet. I'm sure of it. And if we continue the level of disparity that we have, if we continue to accept all of the fear and the hatred and the anger that we are being fed on a daily basis, I don't think we're going to be able to respond to those challenges in a satisfactory fashion. So I'm going to ask each of us to think, how can we diminish the disparity in our community? The anger, the frustration, and the fear. That's the poison. The other things work out. But the anger and the fear, the frustration, that's what we have to overcome. And we can't overcome that by demanding or by force. We have to overcome that by acceptance and negotiation, conversation, and interaction. There are people in this country who are kind of running things. And like the people that I saw in Kansas, their conditioning, their philosophy has been, you take what you want. There are weak people and there are strong people. And if you want to succeed, you take what you want. You win through intimidation. I have a book in my library I got in college called Winning Through Intimidation. I'm sure a lot of people have read that book. We have to hold hands and stick together, folks, and come together as a society and say, that kind of philosophy is not acceptable. Making people afraid and angry is not an acceptable way to run our country, to run the world, to run our state, to run our city. And folks, how about the disparity within yourself? The fear you have about your own self, your inner frustrations. A lot to think about. And violence and stubbornness and attitude are not going to help us to respond to this huge challenge of shifting the consciousness of our society, of our community. Every one of us can respond to this challenge differently. We have to, in every avenue that we take. And I'm glad there's a women's march. I'm glad there's Black Lives Matter. I'm glad it's Cesar Chavez worked so hard and led a movement for the farm workers, for the migrant farm workers right here in this state. But he took on Gandhi's nonviolence and King's nonviolence attitude. And it wasn't about winning or losing, which is about everything in our society. You're a winner or a loser. No, it was about working together, uniting the owners and the workers and the markets so that together they could all prosper. And I encourage each of you to think about that. How can we work together to unite? To unite the big shots and the working folks and the have-not folks. How can we all get together and learn how to prosper? Learn how to live in harmony without all the labels. We're all different, but we are all human beings. We are all sentinel beings. We are all created by the Spirit. We're all created by the divine, by God. And when we were designed and created and manufactured, we all had this chip inside of us that was our harmony chip. And most of us start turning it off at a very early age. Overcoming anger and fear and hatred. That's our challenge. And I think there is truly only one solution. That's to be in unity with one another, to hold hands and stick together. and hold hands, no matter whether they're soft or calloused. Black, white, brown, doesn't make any difference. There is no difference in the fact we are all human beings. We all want a life with rewarding experiences. We all got the crud to put up with. That's part of life. But at some point, it must be worth it. And when we hold hands and stick together, it doesn't take very long, I know for a fact, that you know it's worth it. I could stand up here and talk about this for hours. But if you haven't heard by now, you probably aren't. And the donuts are getting stale. We're going to sing a song called Unity. Let there be unity. We've never sung this before, but the lyrics are fantastic, and they're just exactly the point I'm trying to make today. So Debbie, would you play it through once for us? And then we will sing it.